Welcome to another episode of Stirrups and Spirits. Today we are talking with the Instagram sensation, the Bourbon Trail Traveler Jennifer Henshaw, also a Bourbon Women member. We're talking today with her about her favorite distilleries and all of her traveling adventures. So grab your favorite pour and enjoy. Here we go. All right, welcome everyone to another episode of Stirrups and Spirits. I'm Tamara, and I want to introduce everyone. I have with me the Bourbon Trail Traveler, Jennifer Henshaw, and she's going to tell us about a lot of her experiences that she's had traveling not only the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, but a lot of different states and different distilleries that she's been to, and she's tasted way more bourbon than a lot of us have. So she's got a lot of insight, a lot of information, and Jennifer, take it away. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got started.
Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. I started touring distilleries with my husband just as, when we were traveling. It was just kind of a different thing to do along with, the other things we were doing on our trips. We started actually in Nashville. I saw Corsair I love to look at maps when I'm planning my trips, and Marathon Motorworks is this really cool old building that they've refurbished, and Nelson's Greenbrier is actually in there, which you might have heard of. Corsair had both beer and whiskey. So beer was for me, whiskey was for my husband. And so that's how we started it off. And then we started going to Louisville like that same year. And that was 2016. I didn't really start drinking whiskey until 2020, like a lot of us. I enjoyed tasting it on the tours, but I never wanted to drink it at home. And I really started with hot toddies and then found Manhattans. And I was, during the pandemic, just getting into making cocktails at home. And then I found out about the Bourbon Women group. And they had their big conference virtually that year in 21. And so I joined that, found all these fabulous women who had an interest in whiskey. And that kind of guided then the distilleries that I was wanting to go to. And also got into an interest in the distilleries that got their grains locally or regionally. And I developed a real passion for that. And we can talk about that later. But so far, I actually started a spreadsheet to keep track. I've visited 65 distilleries in 17 states.
Wow.
So, and I've done 43 tours. So some of the places I went to, they were only the tasting rooms, like especially in Grand Rapids, like Mammoth Distilling is farther north in Michigan, but they have tasting rooms around the state. So got to do that. There are some other ones like that. And kind of non-distilling producers that have tasting rooms. So that's the gap there between tours and distilleries visited. But.
Okay. So like most people, and I've heard this from a lot of people that say, oh God, bourbon's awful. I hate it. It's gross. The easiest way to get into it is through cocktails. And it sounds like you did the same thing, starting off with cocktails, finding things that you like that had bourbon as an ingredient, and then kind of making your way onto more of the tasting side of it.
Yeah. And rye really for me more than bourbon for cocktails. But yeah, I think that's a great way to get into it. And I've tried to start introducing my friends, through some cocktails and little tastings and things like that. I think I did kind of graduate to drinking it neat. So I really, most times I'm just, pouring a little sip for the evening and drinking it neat.
Yep.
But there are so many great cocktails out there. I just found them through, Instagram or through kind of Googling whiskey cocktails. And then I started keeping a cocktail journal, and, I have a a few favorites, but I've actually gotten out of the habit of making them lately, so I need to get back to that.
Oh, and there's been some great recipes that have come out recently that I've seen floating around on Instagram and TikTok for fall holiday cocktails. Hot buttered apple cider with bourbon, and oh my gosh, they all look so amazing. I can't wait to start trying some of those. So now
Yes,
that the
definitely.
weather's cooling off a little bit down here, we're starting to feel like fall, even though we'll get tricked into another week of summer somewhere along the way because it's Florida and it happens.
That's
But
right.
yeah, so out of all these places that you've toured, do you have a favorite?
Um,
A multitude of favorites or a top five? Because I know it's so hard to nail it down to just one.
yeah, I would say in Kentucky, my top three that I tell people are Maker's Mark. Um, I love that they're a B Corp, which means they go through a lot of things to make them sustainable.
Yes.
It's a very rigorous program that you have to go through to get that certification. And I love the Margie Samuels story. And I love that every time we've been three times, there's something new that we get to see. And they have a lot of different kinds of tours too. And I would love to take some more of their focus tours on sustainability or the different things they're doing, their grains. So that'll always be a favorite. That's also my husband's favorite bourbon. So we'll always keep going back there. Woodford Reserve, I really love the grounds there. I love that Elizabeth McCall is also into sustainable practices, and they're working with local farmers on some new things, some rye and different things like that. And then Castle and Key, I think, is just a beautiful place, and it's got such great history, being the original E.H. Taylor distillery, and they have these gardens that they use to make their gin, and it's just a really beautiful place. And I went there in 20, I think it was 2019. It was right before Marianne Eves left, so I made it right in time before she departed. But I do tell people, just for how beautiful it is and the history of it, I think everyone should go there.
Yeah, that's one I haven't been to yet. Castle and Key. They source for Pinhook, and I love Pinhook bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
So I've keep saying I got to get to Castle and Key, got to get there, and so one of these trips out there, that's on my list of definite have to go tos.
Yes. And then outside of Kentucky, I went to Holiday
Uh-huh.
Distillery this year. They're outside of Kansas City. And if you didn't know better, if you were just dropped in the middle of it without any explanation, you'd think you were in Kentucky, because it's got the rolling hills. It's this great historic property. And, they're they're just doing a great job with their tours and what they're putting out. So I recommend that one if you're in the Kansas City area.
And that's what I'm drinking tonight.
Great.
Drinking some Holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There you go.
this is the soft red wheat bottled in bond, and it is excellent. So
Yeah.
I've actually got a little straight pour just for the tasting of it, because I just love the notes in it, and it's so smooth. And then I have a little cocktail that I made. This is just the bourbon itself with a little bit of ginger beer,
Oh, that
and
sounds
it's
great.
just a nice little crisp for the end of the day. But yeah, Holiday is wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And then O'Shaughnessy Distillery, that makes Keeper's Heart in Minneapolis. They have maybe the most beautiful tasting lounge I've been in. They have these huge copper pot stills that are behind glass overlooking the seating area. And it's all leather and just beautiful. Um, and they serve food there. So when I was there, I didn't get to do a tour, but I did a little flight and had some food, and it was excellent. So I recommend that. And then Hill Rock Estate Distillery in upstate New York, they're in the Hudson Valley. They really spared no expense. It's not a huge distillery, but everything that's there is gorgeous. They grow their own grains, and they you can include a charcuterie board in your tour, and it was just the best thing. That's one of my favorite memories from that whole trip. And they get their cheese from a local creamery that they told me how to get to, so I drove around and bought some cheese to take with me. So yeah, that's a beautiful location. And then I'll just add a Thornton Distillery that's outside of Chicago. I just did a bourbon women event there last weekend, and there's a lot of great history there. It's the oldest standing brewery, so it started out as a brewery back in the day, in Chicago. It's not the oldest brewery because, with the Chicago fire, some buildings were lost, but this is the last one standing. They're on a limestone, um, whatever that's called, a bed.
Uh-huh.
So they've got this great water. There's a Capone link to it, of course,
Of course.
during Prohibition, and so they're making some great single malts that I think people are going to be really excited about. We got to taste a lot of them out of the barrels last weekend, and there was one that was a honey mead finish that was just so excellent. So it reminded me of an unpeated Scotch, which is my favorite kind of Scotch. I don't really like peat,
Yeah,
but
I'm not a peat fan myself either.
yeah, but they are actually doing an Illinois peat single malt too. They were able
Really?
to get peat from, I think it's, I don't want to misspeak, but anyway, it was in a, local to the area where they got it. And we tasted it, and it's not too much smoke for me. I could drink it, but it's got a little bit of that nice smoky flavor. So
How interesting. I didn't know we
that'll
had
be,
any domestic peat going into
yeah,
any wow, that's cool. All right.
yeah. So that's a cool thing coming out of the Chicago
Yeah.
area.
Very cool. Very cool. So after you started doing all these tours and finding out that this was actually a thing that you enjoyed doing, at what point did you decide to start documenting all of this on your social media?
Yeah, well, that was another pandemic thing where I was really missing our trips, and I had, these pictures from the places we had gone in the last 4 years, and I just loved the look of those old distilleries, the
Hmm.
old buildings and the grounds. I think it's just beautiful. So I just thought, well, I'll just start this page to share my photographs from the trips we did take. And then after I discovered Bourbon Women, I started, following a lot of women who were interested in whiskey, either in the industry or just consumers. And that's kind of how it started. And now it's this nice community, as I'm sure like,
Oh yeah.
I felt going to the Bourbon Women Conference this year, and it was my first time going. I was seeing old friends because I'm friendly with so many of them online, and I've met a few of them in person over the years, but really this was the first time meeting a lot of them. And so that was a great way to come into a big group like that.
Yep. And a nice way to put names and faces together too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize this year was your first symposium.
Mhm. Yes, it was. I
Oh, wow.
actually had tickets in 21, but decided not to go. There was a COVID spike, and I just wasn't feeling comfortable about it. And then in 22, my mom was actually in hospice. And so it was good that I didn't buy the tickets, because that was just not a good time to be away. And
Yeah.
then 23, I had a work conference. So there just really was not a good year for me to go until
Right.
this year. So it just worked out really well.
Well, that's good. So did you come away with all your expectations met as far as what you thought you would get out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was so great to have so many women in the industry there, because
Mhm.
we had the event that was like the rock stars that evening, and I really feel that way about them. I feel like they're celebrities to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it was great to have that opportunity to talk to so many of them, and really to see, just, like I'm saying, like old friends there. And then every place we went pretty much rolled out the red carpet for us. So all the different tours we got to take, there was swag and cocktails, and, just giving us a great tour and letting, like, Starlight Distillery. I hadn't been there before, and they just let us taste so many samples out of the barrel. And that's just the fun part of it, is, that a lot of them really see the value in what, you know we can bring as consumers, and respect us, as much as the men.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I comparing the two, the difference between the kind of tours that we get through the Bourbon Women experiences versus what you would get just going in with the general public is a whole different ball game. I mean, I feel like we get, a little bit of behind the scenes, and we get a little bit different. We're not getting what any Joe Blow off the street is going to get. We're getting something a little special. So
Yeah.
it's always fun to, even if it's somewhere that you've been and it comes up on the symposium schedule as somewhere to go, you're kind of like, ooh, I'd like to see behind the scenes at that place. That'd be kind of fun. So like
Yeah.
this year I went to the Jim Beam excursion. It was all day thing. We were there for hours, and we got to go places they don't let the general public go. So, of course, we're walking around going, wow, we feel really special. We've seen parts of this that people don't usually get to see. And the place is huge and it's beautiful and it's manicured and gorgeous and looks like Disney World. I mean, it's just, they must have a crew bigger than their distillery crew for their grounds, because it's absolutely picturesque.
Yeah.
But, you get so much more being a part of that organization, and not just in the workshops that we get at Symposium, but the experiences that we get that they arrange for us through all the distilleries. So it's a very different experience than going as general public and to get just a standard tour somewhere or tasting. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a
Absolutely.
benefit. I always try to point that out when I meet women who go, "Oh, what's Bourbon Women?" Well, here, let me tell you about it.
Yeah, exactly. And um, the virtual events I also love, and I hope they'll
Hmm.
continue to do those. I know they did one this week, I think, that was kind of about the effects that different types of water can have on your whiskey and your cocktails. And so I'm glad that's one great thing that came out of the pandemic is all the virtual events that are continuing. So
Yeah, and those are a lot of fun, because you get to see faces that you don't see all the time at your in-person events. Because you get, like, we're doing one through Florida for the national level. It's open to everybody. That we're doing with Old Elk in
oh,
it's actually November 7th, so it's coming up. But it's open to everybody, so everybody will get a
okay.
tasting kit that, in all the different states we're having it done. So I think that one will be a lot of fun. We're going to do a tasting and a fall cocktail that we're going to learn how to batch make it. So if you're
Mm.
having a party, you can make it in a punch bowl, or make it pre-make it in a large quantity and put it aside for your party. So
Yeah. Is Heather doing that or is
no, oh my gosh, her name's Melinda Maddox is doing it.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those that don't know, Heather Wibbles is the cocktail Contessa who does a lot of the events that have to do with cocktails with the group. So
Yes, she has
should
a
be
she
sure to
has a
look her
virtual
up.
event coming up too. I think she has one the first or second week of December with us.
Okay,
So
great.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that when they send samples to you, especially of ones that aren't, readily available in your area. So that's
Yes,
always
and
fun.
especially when there's little goodies in the box too.
Yes, definitely.
So how did you come up with the Bourbon Trail Traveler as your Instagram name? Because you're kind of Instagram famous. You have
Oh, well, I
See,
don't
I
know
have
about
your
that.
I have your page pulled up here. You have, let me see how many followers you have as of today.
Not that many. I don't consider myself an influencer.
Oh, come
Um,
on.
and I also feel like a lot of those followers are not real people or real bourbon
20
enthusiasts. But
2,111. That's
yeah,
really
well, yeah. I only get like my highest likes are maybe 100, maybe upwards of that. But yeah, I mean, I really feel like I have my community, so it doesn't matter how many people are following. Like everybody's welcome, of course, but I'm not going by the numbers. I guess is what I'm saying. Like I know there's even if it's just a handful of people who appreciate what I'm doing, that's fine for
Yep.
me. Um, but yeah, I think I was just, looking for like a clever name and I like the alliteration of it. Um, and at the time, like I really did think whiskey was the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky. And since then, since, being involved with the group and just there's been such a boom in the last 3 to 5 years of distilleries everywhere. Now, pretty much anywhere you travel in the country, you can find a distillery to visit. So probably I would come up with a different name now if I were starting all over, because I'm not just about bourbon. I really like rye. I like single malt. Um, so, it was just of the time.
Hey, it works and it's catchy.
So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. So you mentioned that you liked how a lot of the distilleries source their products that they use to make their mash bill or to make their products, that they just source them locally. So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit more about what you do with that.
Yeah. Well, I found out about the Artisan Grain Collaborative in the last couple of years. And um, I talked with some people. So I volunteer with a group called the Land Connection that's here. I'm in Champaign, Illinois, and they're a local group that helps farmers learn about sustainable practices. And they have a national conference that's here in Champaign. And so at that conference, I talked to some people at several different organizations in the Midwest, but Artisan Grain Collaborative was one of them. And I had been friendly with one of their reps through Instagram as well. And she encouraged me to apply as a member. And you do have to apply to be in the group, but it's free. And it's for um, distillers, brewers, farmers, bakers, millers, maltsters, anyone in the food industry that wants to work locally. Um, and so they have a brewing and distilling working group, and that's what I joined. So I'm an advocate member, and my goal was really to connect distillers with local farmers. And um, while that kind of has morphed into, I'm recruiting distillery members to the Artisan Grain Collaborative. And then it's up to the working group and the networking and the resources for them to connect with farmers. So we meet every other month virtually. So we have about 10 distillery members now. I've reached out to at least three others that I had visited and thought might be interested in joining. Um, this is just for the upper Midwest, so it's 7 states um, surrounding Illinois, and um, so I've reached out so that hopefully they will join, be able to get some networking, some resources. Um, During the virtual meetings, they will do tours of a distillery or brewery member. They might talk about some unusual grain that they're working with. They might talk about some studies that they've done on grains, or the grain supply. And so, yeah, this is, without trying to go out on my own and create a whole new organization. This is, I think, the best place for me as far as what I can bring to it, because I am out there talking to a lot of distillers. And so it's easy for me to just, give them my card and um, say, if you want to learn more about the Artisan Grain Collaborative, I'll connect you with John Clark, who is the leader of that working group. And, like I was saying, as many as we have around the country now, distilleries, the more we can utilize local grains,
Mm-hmm.
the better, I think, for local economies.
Absolutely, absolutely. I did a distiller for a day project with the St. Augustine Distillery in St. Augustine, Florida. And so I got to do an entire day of production with them from start to finish. We pulled grains off the truck. We ground the corn. We ground all the everything. We
Wow.
pounded um, botanicals. Dry. They get dried botanicals in for their gin, and I got to pound them with this huge wooden hammer. They were like, "If you're mad at anybody, just put their face on this bag." But it was amazing just to see the whole process and really get a hands-on feel for what they do and how they make their craft. And I got to proof down some stuff that was straight off the still. I got to test stuff straight off the still. So it was a little bit of a chemistry experiment all at the same time. So I learned a lot. It was a great experience for me, a lot of fun. But they're the same way. They like to source everything local, and so they like to support their local farmers. All their corn, all their grain, everything comes from somewhere within a short drive from the distillery itself. So there's a lot of agriculture in Florida and South Georgia. And so everything they're getting is coming from right there within their region.
That's so
So,
great because it just helps the whole community,
yeah. Yeah.
The
So,
farmers
yeah.
feel good about producing something that they can actually then hold up and say, we contributed to this. And so, yeah, we have a new distillery just right up the road, about half an hour from me in Paxton, Illinois, called Silver Tree Spirits. And it's three brothers who grew up on an organic farm, and now they started a distillery to use those grains to make whiskey. And Will Glazik is one of them that invited me to come for a little tour of the place, and he's in the artisan grain collaborative working group too. But he was talking about that this it's farmers will take pride in being able to show something, because a lot of the corn here in Illinois and probably all around the Midwest is just gone for cattle feed or exported or whatever. It doesn't go to food and um, you know spirits, whatever you want to something for the community. So it's I think it's great when the more we can build those connections, the better.
Absolutely. And I think the more that everybody can source locally and help, the small guys grow or be sustainable, and, you scratch my back, I scratch your back kind of situation where, it's helping the distillery, it's helping the farmer, it's a win-win situation for everybody. And even and I don't know if your distilleries do this up there, but we also have a large cattle industry here in Florida. And so places like the St. Augustine distillery, when they're done with their mash, after they've cooked it down, used what they need out of it, it actually goes back to the farmers, and they can feed what's left off once it's been cooked down. They can feed that back to their cows.
Yeah.
So it comes full cycle. There's no waste, which
Right.
I find that just to be wonderful. It's a great way to have a truly symbiotic back and forth relationship where everybody wins.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's more probably spent grain that they know what to do with, and especially in Kentucky.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
yeah, I'm sure there needs to be some like creative problem solving with that.
Yep. So what's next on your list for the Bourbon Trail Traveler? Have you got any international plans as far as visiting distilleries? I know last when I talked with Karen Locke, she and I had talked about we wanted to collaborate on a trip to go to the Isle of Skye, and we do a Whiskey Women Bourbon Bells
Yeah,
issue edition over there in Scotland and Ireland.
that would be amazing. Yes, I would love to go to Scotland. There are some. I keep repeating myself with sustainability, but there are some really great distilleries there in Scotland, like Nicknean, that's another B Corp, like Maker's Mark is, where they're just trying to be as efficient and, as good for the land and the environment as they can be. And it's all women owned, a lot of women in the team, and they have just beautiful, unpeated scotch that I am addicted to. I've been through one bottle. I have two on the shelf, and they do special releases, and it's now available in the U.S. So it's very tempting to just try to collect them all. But and there are several in Scotland. Yeah, that would be great to visit. But I don't have any plans for international travel coming up soon. Um, I would love to go out to Denver. There are several in the Denver area and kind of outlying um, in Colorado. Laws, I'm a big fan of Laws whiskey. Leopold Brothers, Talnua, those would be my top three. And then there are a couple. Marble Distilling is also very focused on sustainability. Um, so I would definitely want to try to hit that. I'd love to go to Milam and Green in Texas. That's doable in the next year, possibly. And I mean, there are so many, but there's one in the far northwest corner of Minnesota called Far North, that I would love to go to. He's a farmer. He did this great study on rye, the different flavors of rye, and he's doing a lot of different single varietal whiskeys based on those different ryes that he's growing. And so I would love it if they put out a sample pack that I could get, because it's hard for me, especially with rye, because my husband doesn't like it, um, to buy every bottle that I want to try because it takes me forever to get through it. I'm really not a big drinker. I'll drink, 1 or 2 ounces a night, if that, maybe a few times a week. So that's a lot when when you have this plus, overflow in other parts of the house. So yeah, it's hard for me to try everything I want to without going there. So
Yeah, well, that seems to be the case for us too. We have an extensive collection. It's now covers the entire bar top and both the shelves, and some of it we've bought to collect. Some of it we've bought an extra bottle of to drink, and then we have the stuff that we like on a regular basis, our normal everyday stuff. And then we travel places. Like a few weeks ago, we went to Tennessee because we got a new puppy, and that's where he came from. So we had to go pick him up. And I said, well, we're only going to be 20 minutes from Jack Daniels, and 20 minutes the other direction is Uncle Nearest. So guess what we're going to do when we go pick up the puppy? We're going to see some distilleries.
oh,
So,
great.
and we came home with 6 more bottles to add to the collection because,
Yes.
when in Rome, but we figure at some point, we'll have a holiday party and we'll set out a whole bunch. We'll have a tasting with everybody. Hey, let's compare this distillery to that distillery. And we have enough in our collection right now. We could probably do that. We could sit out 3 or 4 distilleries and have a competition. But
Yes. Yeah, I love doing that too. We have a friend who comes over for dinner sometimes, and I'll do flights for him and try to, do a theme of
yep.
some kind to taste through different ryes or different finished whiskeys, and it's really fun. And I have another friend that I share with her every time we go out for lunch or dinner. I'll say, "Do you need more whiskey yet?" And if she does, then I fix up, like 4 different sample bottles of what I have to share with her. So yeah,
Oh, that's
that's the
awesome.
great part of it, is sharing it.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep. We have a couple of those aged in ore flight sets that we swap back and forth with our friends. They'll send us stuff, we'll send them stuff. We go back and forth with, oh, try these. We'll have to rub off the paint after we get done with it, and send back
Right.
new ones.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah, it's always fun to try new things, especially if it's a mystery and you're like, what did you send in this bottle? You forgot to label it. Oh, I don't know. Just see if you like it.
Yeah, I love blind tastings because it all those kind of um, perceptions, preconceived notions that you have of things because of the label or because of how long it's been aged or whatever, that goes out the window because you're just tasting by what you actually like. And I think some people are surprised.
Yep. Or sometimes you look at the color and you go, this is too light, this is too dark, this is I don't know. So I actually bought a set of the blind tasting Glencairns. They're beautiful glass, but they're colored.
Mhm.
So there's a green one, a blue one, a red one, a yellow one, and they're so dark in the rich glass, you can't tell what color the beverage is inside of it. So
Mhm.
those are a lot of fun to pour very different things into, and people are like, "What is this? Just try it." It's
Yeah,
a
I think,
mystery.
yeah, when Marianne Eves had her Eves Blind program, I think she had maybe black Glencairns that were included in the kit. And that was so great because she was highlighting distilleries from all over the country. And then they eventually released them. So, we could go buy them if we wanted to. So,
Yep. Yep. I actually have an Eve's blind bottle. She did one at St. Augustine Distillery. That's the closest distillery to where we live, so we go there a lot. So, and we love St. Augustine. It's like our second home. So we're always in
that's
the
great.
oldest city in the nation.
Yes, I have a group of high school friends that does girls' trips, and we were talking about going to St. Augustine for our
Oh, you
next
should
one.
definitely do it. You should definitely do it. It's a wonderful place.
I would love that. I haven't been there yet.
We'll make sure to set you up with a distillery tour.
Okay. Yes. I
Because
met someone
my
who was at the conference
yeah, my
who
cohort
works
in
there.
Florida, the other Bourbon Women branch ambassador, Brandy, she works there.
Okay,
So
great. Yeah.
yeah, so we always go and say hi to her and try to have lunch with her when we go over. And so, but yeah, they have a great little setup, and they've been, let's see, they've been making bourbon, I think 10 years now. They just put out a 10-year anniversary bottle, I think this year. So, and they've been open 12 years maybe total. But when I heard that they
That's
were
great.
starting that place up, they renovated the old ice plant building, which has
Mm,
been in St. Augustine for like a million years. Um, and the building itself is gorgeous. And so they started out with vodka, sugarcane vodka, and then they make gin and rum as well. And the bourbon was their last product they put out because it had
mhm.
to age.
Of course,
And
yeah.
it at first they had to, their first couple years they had to make a lot of adjustments because aging stuff in Florida is not like aging it anywhere else. We have
Right.
heat and humidity, and we don't get a lot of winter. So if you let it sit a little too long, it gets a little too much. You can't let it,
Mhm.
it has to be just right. So they had to experiment a little bit. So the first couple of years were rough, but their product is on point now. It took them a couple of years to get it just right, but it is really good products now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, nice stuff. So yeah, come to Florida and we'll take you
Okay.
over to St. Augustine for the distillery tour. It's wonderful.
I would love that.
And then you'll have a lot of wonderful pictures for your Instagram page.
Yes. And I prefer to drive if I'm taking road trips, or, if I'm taking a trip, I prefer to drive. So then I can hit a lot of distilleries along the way down there too.
Oh yeah, and there's uh, from here between you and here, there's so many states and so many different things that you can't get anywhere but those places. This the small craft distilleries in the Carolinas, in Georgia, in Virginia, well, maybe not Virginia as much, but
There are some there for sure.
yeah, there's a few, but not as many. But the Carolinas in particular, there's a lot of stuff there that we don't even get here in Florida that
No.
is produced, just north of us. But yeah, you could definitely find some great things on that road trip.
Yeah. I know they're working on the direct to consumer shipping, and I hope more of those laws pass.
I do too, because that would certainly help a lot of these smaller places get their
Yeah.
businesses really booming.
Yeah. I think it recently passed in New York, but I'm not sure of the status of other places yet.
Yeah. I mean, if they're going to pass all these other, if smoking pot is okay recreationally for everyone, then we should be able to put whiskey in a box and ship it across the country.
That's right.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Well, I have to say, it has been absolutely wonderful talking with you, Jennifer. You have been on some amazing tours and have seen some really cool places. So I'm going to recommend that anyone who is listening to this podcast follow you on the Bourbon Trail Traveler on Instagram and catch up on everywhere that you've already been. 65 distilleries and 43 tours, 17 states. Holy cow. That's a lot. That's a lot of
Yeah.
traveling, and you've still got more to do. So
Yeah. So many more.
so much more to come. So much more to come. So I look forward to that, and I look forward to seeing you next year at Symposium.
Yes, absolutely.
And you never know, we may run into each other at a distillery tour somewhere between here and there.
I hope so. Thank you so much for talking.
Oh, thanks for being on the show. It was great to have you.
Thanks.
All right.
You can follow Jennifer on Instagram at the Bourbon Trail Traveler, and be sure to click on her link tree there to find out more about the Artisan Grain Collaborative and the Land Connection. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Stirrups and Spirits. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our channels on social media. And as always, cheers! See you next time!